Hi friends, I'm Amber of the Little Research House, where we are constantly seeking out the joy found in the little things. I am finally tackling one of those projects that has been on my list for the past year since we've lived in our house. The day we moved in, we simply piled my craft supplies into our spare room and shut the door and left it at that. But it is finally time for me to tackle those boxes. We're in the process of shifting our spare room into a home office, so the first thing on the list is that we need to organize the craft supplies that already live in there. I'm going to share our home office transformation in 2 videos, starting with today's video. The first step is getting that room cleared up of all the supplies that are gathered in there and finding a beautiful and efficient storage solution to keep it all inside. Today I'm going to show you that process as well as a few DIYs that I did along the way. But before we begin, let me just show you what we're working with here. As you can see, the room is full of bins and boxes of various craft supplies, and my biggest job is simply sorting through it and getting rid of anything I don't use or I don't need. This step also gave me an idea of what I had so that I know exactly how much storage I'm going to need. Now let's dive in. The first thing I did was sort through everything. I pulled out the items I realistically would not use and either donated them to a local thrift store or passed them along to a friend who I knew would use them. I then grouped like items together so I had a better grip on what kind of storage system I would need. So I purchased a beautiful antique hutch on our local buy and sell for $65. So we are about to go pick it up. Hopefully it's in okay condition, but I'm going to spruce it up with a little bit of paint. And so even if there are a few imperfections, I think it'll work perfectly for what I need it for. We're gonna go pick it up. Our office isn't a big space, so I wanted to find a cabinet that had glass so it wouldn't feel too heavy or clunky. The one I found on the buy and sell was the perfect size. I started by giving it a good wipe down with vinegar and water. As you can see, there were many years of grime and dust to wipe off before adding any paint. I then went in and taped off around the glass. I decided to paint it with a gray chalk paint that I had on hand. Chalk paint is so easy to use for quick furniture transformations, and this country gray color fit perfectly within my design plan for the overall room with a slightly blue-green undertone to it. Chalk paint is ridiculously easy. You simply stir it and brush it on. I did 2 coats within an hour of each other and left the piece without a top coat. I decided not to paint the inside of the cabinet because it was easier not to, and I was happy to have some contrast between the inside and the outside. Plus, I was planning to fill the cabinet with storage baskets and boxes anyways. The payoff was huge for just a couple of hours worth of work and some chalk paint I already had on hand. The main reason why I went through my stuff before I purchased storage containers was so that I had an idea about what I would need to get. I ended up purchasing a handful of craft paper photo storage boxes for a couple of dollars each from the craft store. These were perfect for corralling smaller items together. But since you'd be able to see the storage containers through the glass, I also wanted to bring in some texture. I found a matching set of woven baskets at Homesense for organizing my yarn collection and had an idea to make use of some leftover canvas I found while sorting through my supplies. I have had this white canvas material for years, and since I was purging my craft supplies anyways, I decided to make use of it. I wanted to make some square storage bags that could corral softer materials like my fabric stash, but the canvas was a stark white and I wanted a more muted tone. I decided to try my hand at tea dyeing with an old black tea I had in my cupboard. I didn't dive into research about the science behind tea dyeing, so I don't have an official method to share, but essentially I brought a big pot of water to boil, dumped in my entire container of old tea, and let it simmer for 10 to 15 minutes. I then removed it from the heat, let it cool, strained the tea leaves out, dumped it into a bucket, added the same amount of pure cold water, and submerged my canvas for only a few minutes. I then wrung it out and hung it out to dry before running it through the wash. So, tea-dyed canvas is done, it's dry. I don't know if you can really tell, but it's a little bit splotchy. It didn't do a really even dye, but it's very light, which is exactly what I wanted. I just wanted to add a little bit of warmth to the really stark white canvas. So you can't really see it too much. And I think once it's sewed into baskets and in the cabinet, you really will not be able to tell. So I'm excited. Next steps, I'm going to iron this up, get it nice and flat, and then I can start planning out how the heck I'm going to make these because I, at this point, have no clue. I went ahead and ironed the canvas and laid it out flat to measure out my pieces. I wanted to create open top square storage bins and honestly didn't keep record of my sizing. I made the measurements to fit my cabinet as well as to maximize the amount of canvas I had to work with. I went ahead and cut them out with some help, of course. Because my boxes would have an open top, I decided to hem the top edge of each side before pinning them together to form a box shape. I just made my way around, leaving 1/2 inch seam allowance on every side so they would evenly line up with the bottom piece. Once I was finished attaching the pieces together, I turned everything right side out, rolled down the top edge of the bag, and gave it a more relaxed look. With all my boxes ready to go, it was time to style all of the organizing I had done. I'll admit that I rearranged the contents of the cupboard a handful of times, but I'm so happy with the variety and texture while still ensuring that everything remains consistent looking. The craft photo boxes I used had a chalkboard label on one end, but I turned that end inward so it wouldn't be seen. I initially created paper labels and stuck them on with tape, but opted to order some brass label hardware for a cleaner look. These were easy to measure and pop into the end of the box, and I think the way they look ended up being worth the effort. I stacked a couple of black photo boxes on top of the cabinet as well as my sewing machine, but I felt it needed a softer, more natural element to break up the straight lines, which leads me to my next DIY. I simply shopped my basement and found an old jar that I once used for storing pantry items, but the seal wasn't strong enough to keep the contents fresh. The jar was the perfect size and shape to hold some faux stems. To give it more of a vase look, I removed the cap and used some air dry clay I had on hand to create a smooth rim. I took my time to ensure it was consistently smooth so it looked like it actually belonged on the jar. Once it was fully dry, I went in and painted the entire jar with a dark charcoal tone chalk paint. I know this seems crazy, but I'm telling you, chalk paint even works on glass. Just note that I was planning to use faux stems and this will not be in a high traffic area. I wouldn't recommend this method if you're intending to use it with water and real plants. It took a few coats, but it turned out beautifully. I don't like the heart shape on the jar, but I would simply turn this part of the jar to the back once I placed it on the cabinet. And with that, everything finally had a home.
Clap your hands and you'll feel stronger.
Thank you for joining me for today's video, and I hope that it inspired you to find those little projects in your home that need a little bit of organization. If you liked today's video, make sure you subscribe because I have a few more videos coming up specifically about our home office, as well as so many other projects we have around the home that help us live a more joyful life in the everyday. Also, tell me in the comments if you have been working on any DIYs out of supplies that you've been finding around your house. I always love to hear what other people are working on. Remember, joy is found in the little things, like setting up some beautiful and efficient storage in your home. Bye, friends.